Greetings. Welcome to another show of the Wasim Muhammad Show. I am truly honored to be here with you and give you the community insight on things, the lively art of conversation. And as always, I must start by thanking our wonderful mayor here in the city of Camden, Mayor Dana L. Red, and the superintendent of Camden City Schools, Superintendent Payman Rahanafford, and as an advisory board member, represent to you. And I want to thank our board president, Catherine Blackshaw, and vice president, Ms. Martha Wilson. But it is always an honor to broadcast to you here at the studios here at the local Board of Education and to give to you the lively art of conversation. And I am truly thrilled about this particular show because I have someone with me in the studio another one who's I style as Camden royalty. And this gentleman here, I had the opportunity to sit and watch as a youngster, and if you know anything about basketball, you know it's something about this legend here in the city of Camden, Mr. Kevin Walls. Greetings.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
It's great, definitely an honor to have you here.
Yes, sir.
It's been long, it's been
thank
waiting.
you for having me.
I just give to the community a little bit about who Kevin Walls is. As many of us in our generation know, and the insight of this particular show is we want to preserve and highlight the history of Camden and tell our story, so that we can tell our story so it don't get distorted in other places because you heard it directly from us or those who watched it. But you were definitely not only a phenomenal basketball player, but you're a phenomenal person, indeed. I don't know anyone that can have anything negative to say about you because you were always humble and you was always teaching and you're doing some great things now, and we're going to talk about that. But introduce this younger audience to who you are.
Well, you introduced me most of all, first of all, but yes, I'm had the pleasure of being born and raised here in the city of Camden, back when they said things were not as they supposed to be, but as my career went on, you can tell that it wasn't all about the community. It wasn't about the people in the community, it's about the community itself and how everyone got along, and it was one big family back then when we were coming along. So now it's sort of divided because of certain things. I'm not sure what it is, but the crime rate is up, and the whole thing. It's nothing that's changed from when we were little. It's just that a lot of things have come to light now.
Yes, sir. And now, so you, for those who are out there, you grew up in North Camden section of Camden, correct?
Correct.
Yes, sir. Some wonderful, wonderful people out there. Yeah. And as we talk about you growing up in North Camden, I know it was some wonderful group of guys that, as you talk about the old Camden, that there was always a group of old heads, as we would say, who were around making sure that you did the right thing and, that you stayed out of trouble. And if you were talented, as you were, at a very young age, you were talented. We knew in elementary school, even though I'm a few years behind you, they pretty much knew, and the community knew in elementary school who was going to go and who was going to excel in certain sports or academics in the city of Camden. And you want to give those people a shout out, a few of those people.
Well, yeah, it's unfortunate that a lot of those people that were my mentors have since passed. For example, Frank Philippek, who was a longtime mayor of Belmar, was a big role model in my life. And also a lot of guys who, like the Plumbers and the Munzes and, a lot of names that people aren't familiar with. The Horsies, who's still my best friend. A lot of people aren't familiar with these guys, but these guys never played high school ball, but they were all icons in the city because they made sure we stayed out of trouble.
Correct.
And so, from being able to give back of what they taught me, that's why I do what I do today. I'm sort of like the old mentor now.
Yes,
I teach a lot of kids, inner city kids. I mentor a lot. I teach free basketball clinics where a lot of people teach for money. And, it's just unfortunate. But the reason why I do that is because when I came along, my mother wasn't able to afford basketball camps.
Correct.
So I was one of the lucky, fortunate guys that was good enough that someone was able to pay a tuition for me to go to these camps. But like I said, everyone couldn't afford it. And now this is why I do what I do, to give back and make sure they're able to get some of the knowledge that I'm able to.
Yes, sir. You mentioned some wonderful people. Somebody you mentioned is Frank Philippe, and not only was he the mayor of Belmar, but he also was a community guy here in the city of Camden. As I always tell the story that when he was when he ran the Whitman Park Little League, and I was too small. I had all the heart in the world,
right.
but they was kind of protecting me. He was like, "Little Walker, you too small
Right.
to play for Whitman Park." So I had to travel all the way to Centerville and had to play for the Simbas because the Whitman Park team was what we called then the elite because they put a lot into it and it made it the foundation of what it is today. Good. So you grew up out there in North Camden. You attended what elementary school?
Attended. Before I get into that, I want to just make one thing clear that Frank Philippek discovered Kevin Walls. Yes. Because back then they had the police athletic leagues going around, and my mom was moving around the cities, and this one particular year they were picking teams, and fortunately I got left out, so no one picked me up. So Frank seen me playing in the gym one day. He said, "Why aren't you playing for anybody?" I said, "Well, no one likes the way I play." Yes. So he gives me to this one team was called the 76ers. And the coach of the team was a guy named Victor Rosa, who's still around. Victor picked me up, and not to go through a long story, the first game played, I might have scored about 50 points, and it was an older division. So from that point on, when they had the leagues and they were starting the draft, like everyone was fighting for me to be the #1 pick, even though guys were 2 and 3 years older than I was. But as you know, but I wanted to make that clear. But I started playing basketball because of a friend of mine, and a lot of people don't know this. We put a milk crate on the pole. Yes. And I had never played basketball. I had to been around 7, 8 years old. So he said, "Come on, man, let's play a little ball." I said, "Nah," 'cause I was a baseball guy. I wanted to play baseball all the time. So we started playing, and I just became love for the game. And you know, from just playing it all the time and wanting to get better is what made me what I was. You know.
Yes, that's great. So then, now you in North Camden, you attended what elementary school that is?
I attended Pine Point Junior High School.
Junior high school,
yes,
okay, yes.
At the time. And actually when I got there, I got cut in the 6th grade, believe it or not. They cut me off the team, and just so happened that the same guys that I got cut for, we were playing against over at the Roberto Clemente Center on 6th and Erie Street. Okay. And I was over there scoring 35 or 40 points a game against those guys, so they convinced the coach to pick me up, and we made it to the championship. But I kept that as a motivation, not as a failure, as a motivation.
Correct. So, and it definitely paid off, as we can see, as we were then back at Hatch Middle School, and that was during the time where those middle school leagues were very tough in Camden. As you just said, that you had to try out for middle school leagues, you know what I'm saying? Because the competition was that much, because a lot of people mentored and did so many wonderful things. Now, over at Pine Point, I know that we discovered you playing over at Hatch, that this like, who's this kid with this left hand that would not miss? And I want to remind the audience that when this gentleman talking about 50 and 70 and 80 points, this is during a time where there wasn't no three-pointer in high school or middle school basketball. And you had to really put the ball in the hoop, and people did things that today. So I just want you to remind the audience of that there was no three-pointer at the time.
Well, we laugh about that all the time. And they talk about all the great scorers and all that come out of this area, and people scoring a lot of points back in the day. But, it is what it is. I mean, I guess it's the time I was born. No three-point line. So like you said, you had to be precise and be efficient on the game. So that's why I concentrated on, and I always played with an extra man guarding me.
Correct.
See, and a lot of people don't know that. They used to call this thing a boxing one, where some games I had boxing twos.
Correct.
You know, so, but, that's why you had to shoot at the high percentage. And, and the competition was so great back then that you got better if you really concentrated on it, as well as you guys. We played against you guys at Hatch, Morgan Village, like you said. The leagues were terrific back then. And I think today that's what's missing in the junior high schools for the development of the kids. You get more people off the streets, you get more kids involved in stuff, and the community becomes one.
Correct, and I think that's important. This is why we want to stress this, and not only the impact that you made on the basketball court, I mean, the impact that you're making in life now. We're going to later get into those wonderful things, but I remember that at that Hatch Middle School, at Camden High School, every year they would either choose Camden High School or Woodrow Wilson as the championship for the middle school league here in Camden. This is before the advent of family schools, and nevertheless, we played. I think Hatch was undefeated or something like that, and in the championship game at Camden High School, I'll never forget. You really showed off and made your mark there, and that we believe, and I don't know that was the mark because Coach Turner, who was the legendary Coach Clarence Turner, that the high school gym is named after here at Camden High School, was there to discover some great talent, and that's where the story began, and we're going to talk a little more about that. But if you want to say something to that championship game.
Well, let me go back a little further than that. Coming out of Pine Point, I had to make a decision what school I wanted to attend. The coach that cut me as a sixth grader was now the JV coach over Woodrow Wilson.
Okay.
So when it came time for me to decide what high school, I wasn't going back to where that. So I wanted to make him, aware of what he really messed out on.
Yes,
and that's why I chose to go to Camden High School. I had every high school in the East Coast area contacted me.
Yes,
I could have went to any high school in America.
And
but I chose Camden High School because at the time, Camden High School was like the place to be if you want to develop as a student athlete.
Yes, sir. Well, we're going to get back and we're going to talk a little more about that, and we're going to leave that as an abbreviated moment, that decision making that some young people have, and we're going to talk to Mr. Walls about some of the things that guided him to that decision making as he started talking about that. But we're going to be right back. We have as I call them, the Camden royalty. And I only say that because all of us are royalty, but some of us excelled in areas and we have to be able to recognize talent and gifts in other people. But Kevin Walls later went on, became a high school McDonald All-American from Camden, and also starred one of the three legs of the Stars of Camden, that Camden connection at the Louisville Cardinals that also won a national collegiate championship. So we will be right back with our friend Kevin Walls.
They call them the golden years, and for many seniors, they are. But for too many others, retirement is like a prison.
Do you have any jacks?
The difference? This couple saved for their retirement, and this couple didn't. It's your choice. Choose to save. To learn how to get started, get your free Power to Choose brochure, because your retirement can truly be your golden years.
And welcome back, and we're here at the Wasim Muhammad Show with legendary Camden's own Kevin Walls, who excelled in so many things and on the court. As you said, baseball was your thing growing up in North Camden, doing some wonderful things. And you said that you had a lot of decision to make when you were coming out of middle school at Pine Point Middle School, and you had to make a decision to go on and figure out who you wanted to play for.
Correct.
Was that decision tough, or did your parents weigh in that decision, or friends?
It was tough because you got to remember now, I was only 14 going on 15 years old. So, I still was kind of raw and, really what I wanted to do in life, but I knew I wanted to do something. And being that I came out of a home with just a mother with 8 other kids, I had to decide real fast. You want to go this way or you want to go that way? I chose to go the right way because that's the way I was brought up by my mother. And being a father figure at a young age in the house. And not that I was the oldest kid in the house, but I also served as the older, mature kid.
Let's stay right there for a minute. How important do you think that is? I heard you talk about your mother, and definitely I do know your mother. She was a wonderful woman. And how important do you think that is? You talking about single mothers, and we talk a lot about single mothers here in urban centers, unfortunately.
Correct.
But you talked about the strength that your mother had, that that she empowered you to become a young man. What is the difference, you think, of what's going on today with single mothers and the mother that you had? If you can share with our audience about that.
Well, the single mothers today are mainly young kids. Our mothers were of age, and a lot of these young mothers today are still babies themselves. So they don't have the knowledge or the strength. And it's funny because I talk about this a lot with my mother, like how could you raise 8 children on your own with a fixed income every month and not as half as much as they get today for one person. And she said, well, it's all the strength that I had that wanting to you know, to raise my kids, whether it's a male in the house or not, that we still had to live and make do and make our life better. So, you know, the biggest thing to me is the maturity. You know, and like I said, the community was a lot different back then. It was a family.
Correct.
Now it's so divided because you know you can't correct someone else's child these days. Back when we were coming up, you can correct me down the street and my mother wouldn't take it personal.
Correct.
As a matter of fact, she would, when I got home, she would correct you again.
Correct.
You know, and I think that's the biggest problem.
Yes,
you
sir.
know, they take it personal and not, you know, not otherwise.
That old acronym of it takes a village to raise a child.
There you
we
go.
live by that. That was the natural experience of,
Correct.
of, as we say, black folks here.
Correct.
In America, we had that, and the more we get away from that natural experience,
now,
the more unnatural things get.
The more unnatural.
And as you can see, and
Yes.
that's why I wanted to take an abbreviated moment to talk about that, because I
Yes.
think that's very
That's
important.
very
because you had
important.
strong single mothers. We didn't complain that, you know, we took, people in the community took self-responsibility and said, listen, this is the hand I'm dealt, I'm single, but here's what I'm going to do in the community, help to raise that out. And she did a wonderful job, as I can see, knowing your brothers and,
Yes.
and your family members, and that's those tough mothers. Now, I believe you were the first freshman to really play varsity basketball at Camden High School. Is that true?
I think I might have been the second.
The second?
I think Wayne Smalls in the early 70s
Okay,
might have been
correct.
the first
Yes.
freshman to play.
Correct.
But it was tough for me because I wanted to start. Because anywhere else I know I could have started.
Yeah.
But you know, that shows my toughness, because why go somewhere and not get better? When he thought that these guys were better, it made me better.
Correct.
Because now I'm not just given anything, I had to earn it.
Yes, sir.
And
Now,
that's,
do you think it was the charisma of Clarence Turner and Camden basketball that made you choose Camden High School to come over there? Like you said, you could have went anywhere and started as a freshman and did some wonderful things, but you chose to go to Camden High School. What do you think that was? What guided you?
for
there?
sure, him. Just him. I mean, I used
Yes,
to,
sir.
you know, as kids, we go and watch these games because Camden High was like the Mecca
Yes, sir.
back then.
Yeah.
And I go there and I sit and watch this guy. Not only was he a coach, but he was a father figure that I was missing.
Correct. Yes, sir.
And that's what got me.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, he brought that aspect in my life, and he was very honest with me. He was tough. We all know that he was tough.
Correct.
But that's what made us men.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of people don't understand what he really meant to us as young men.
Correct. Yes, sir. And you talked about watching some of those games. I mean,
Yes.
we just grew up and watched it. I think Charlie Howell, which is your cousin,
Correct.
who played with my brother,
Your brother,
Jesse Mustafa
Jesse.
Walker, and it was some wonderful times. And every kid wanted to play for Camden High School and play for Clarence Turner.
Correct.
So now you're there, and if you weren't the first freshman, but you were definitely the most visible freshman in Camden history that we know of. It was in at that time, and coming in and playing on that varsity team, which was a great arguably one of the greatest teams
ever.
and not only in Camden High School history, but in New
country.
Jersey and country history.
Yes.
And I think one of the magazines rated that team as probably the second greatest team of all times at the end of the decade. And
Yeah.
what experience was that, playing with the great Billy Thompson, Milt Wagner, and Gary Ware, and David Kelly, and
Wow.
such
It was
wonderful things? Yeah.
at the time, Milt Wagner was the man.
Yes,
Billy
sir.
Thompson was up and coming.
Correct.
And I used to watch those guys. Matter of fact, Milt took me under his wing when I first got to the school. And I used to look at this. I looked at the guy, how he walked.
Yes,
You understand what I'm saying? I looked at how he walked and how he carried himself, and tried to take some of those,
Yes.
you know, those things. And it worked. It was a tremendous experience because I got to learn a lot as a young kid, and real competitive. Like they made it difficult for me to get my shot off, which I wasn't used to. And through the years, it just made the game so easy for me. Actually, you know, a lot of people don't even know this. I was actually bored after my sophomore year of basketball. I almost started to do something else, because basketball, to me, it wasn't even a challenge anymore. You know, we pretty much did what we want. We never lost a game in the area. We didn't lose a game in a conference. I went to these camps, and all the guys that they're supposed to be these dudes in other states, it was like, you know, I
Yes.
played against better guys where I live.
Correct.
You know, so
Yes,
you know,
sir.
with all of that, man, it was tremendous. You know,
Yes, sir.
it got me to meet a lot of people. I got to travel the country, you know, as a young kid, and like all these big time college coaches that kids go and watch these movies, they see all these coaches in the background.
Correct.
It really happens.
Correct, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we can say that. Now, and I have to ask you this because someone, when I told them I was going to interview you, they tweeted me and emailed me last night. Asked him about that infamous year of 1981, his freshman year, when you guys were ranked #1 high school team in the country.
Right.
And that same day or week or something, and y'all lose to Neptune after being undefeated, such a wonderful team.
Correct.
What happened that game? You get to tell the story. We get it from you. I know everybody have their opinions about what happened, but you were actually there on that team. What do you think from Kevin Wall's perspective happened that year?
Well, if you were a fan and you were following that back then and you understood what went on, we got to the game an hour late.
That's correct.
Because of the traffic, so much traffic, and the people wanted to see that game. We had to actually drive, I would say, a good 10 miles on the opposite side of the road, being led by the state police to get to the arena.
That's correct, yeah.
And once we got there, we were rushed on the floor. Tremendous. We were rushed on the floor. We just had to get out there. Now, you know from playing sports, if a team is there and they're getting comfortable and they're there waiting for you, it's a lot harder.
Correct.
We just never got, not taking anything from them. They had a good team.
Correct.
We just got there and wasn't ready.
Correct.
I mean, they were ready for us, and they understood. We a lot of times our natural talent was able to take over, but they had a game plan and it worked for them.
Yeah.
If we played them 10 times, that was probably their one game that they beat us.
Correct. And that's why it's so important when you get on the next level that they make it mandatory that you arrive in that arena certain times. You're there at that city a day before, and all of those things are important.
Right.
But I think that's something that I think Camden need to hear, because everybody always talking about, oh, what happened? They sold the game out of everything. So I'm glad that you got to tell it from Kevin Wall's perspective, who was actually there. And you just reminded me of that history. That was actually what happened. And people who knew inside knew what happened. So now you're going back to your sophomore year.
Yes.
Billy Thompson is ranked the top player in the country, coming from doing such a great job of those basketball camps, and you, the up and coming next star. Describe that year. And you played with some great players, some great talent like Wesley Fuller and Jerome White and Steve Williams Lamont Smalls, and it was some great talent that you guys played with. And as you said, the talent just from growing up in Camden, the talent was what we consider great talent compared to the rest of the country.
Well, yeah. Well, when you playing with someone who's supposed to be the best at anything, I think it's an opportunity. I knew that Billy Thompson was a great player, but Billy Thompson couldn't do it himself. Correct. So I had to either step up or step out. Yes, like I had to either mature, because this is my first year starting as a high school player now. As good as you think you are, but sometimes it's not all what it's cut out to be. So I stepped into that role where I was Robin, he was Batman.
Yes, sir.
So, and the experience was great. And to watch Milt go out as a McDonald's All-American and then Billy come up, that made me want to be one.
Yes,
because now this game, you got to remember, the McDonald's game started in '78. It was only '82. That's like a 4-year period there.
Correct.
So the game wasn't that old, and this is supposedly the cream of the crop for high school basketball. So it made me want to be that.
Yes,
especially when you see somebody that's so close to you right there. You can all do that. And that's what made me want to be the player that I am.
And that's called inspiration.
Inspiration.
And there's so many things, and this is why we try to tell young people, there's so much you can learn from sports that can connect you with life, about being inspired. You didn't fold. You didn't become, as you would say, jealous. You just waited your turn, use it as inspiration, and come up and do something, and it definitely affected you. I'm glad it affected you that way, because I was coming after you, and watching you inspired me to do, to keep playing and get better and to get stronger and get tougher, and we definitely glad it all happened. So now y'all come back sophomore year.
Yes.
Y'all win the state championship with Billy Thompson, the top player in the country. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, yes. Well, we felt like it was due. I couldn't go through that another year. Actually, when we lost the game that my freshman year, and we were all down and everything, and Billy Thompson made a statement that he could tell you this, that we'll get him next year. But me being a young kid, I said, no, I want it this year.
Yes, sir.
And I pushed him a lot, even though he was a little older and everything. I made him work, because one thing you got to understand: if you're the number one, you're supposed to be the number one in something.
That's right.
You got a lot of responsibility.
With people gunning
and
at
people
you.
gunning at you. You got a lot of jealousy. You got a lot of hatred. You got a lot of people that think you aren't what you are.
Correct.
You know, so, and we talked about that a lot, me and him. And I told Billy, I said, listen, you know, we have to win this. You're a senior. We have to win this. They got away from us last year. And, you know, from that and my maturity level from one year to the next, you know, but me and him, and we had great teammates back then. Everyone accepted their roles. Like, we had roles back then.
Correct.
You know, whatever your role was, whatever you do best,
play.
that's what you do.
That's right.
You know, but, and like you said, we ended up winning the state championship.
Yes, so that was a wonderful time. And I think that year y'all lost to Dunbar. Even though y'all lost to Dunbar, you came back and still won the championship. Y'all didn't fold. And some people say that Dunbar arguably, as y'all team from '81, is one of the better teams in the history of high school basketball. And that was definitely great basketball. When we come back, we're going to continue with your career because it just got better with time after that. You know, and this is during the time I was coming up and as a freshman coming through Camden High. And these things I got to witness and some of those wonderful things. And we're going to come back and talk a little bit with Mr. Walls about that wonderful experience coming from '83 and '84. And you talk about some great high school basketball teams and playing roles and getting young people to accept roles at that time and the maturity and playing for legendary coach Clarence Turner and playing basketball on another level that you can only imagine. Something that we hope to get the high school basketball here, not only at Camden High School, but at Wilson and at football, and get the athletic program in Camden back on track with our young people. So we'll be right back, and don't go nowhere. Don't touch that dial.
Hi, I'm Dr. Shawana Gray with your Health Matters tip for today.
June is Men's Health Month. The top 10 leading causes of death among men in 2010 included heart disease, cancer, unintended injuries, chronic lower respiratory diseases, stroke, diabetes, suicide, Alzheimer's disease, influenza and pneumonia, and kidney disease. Some healthy habits. Men should try to develop good sleeping patterns, manage stress properly, increase fruits and vegetable intake, increase exercise, avoid tobacco intake, and decrease salt intake. Recommendations: preventative health examinations, blood pressure screening, blood glucose or sugar screening, cholesterol screening, body mass index, and vaccinations. Where to go? CamCare Health Corporation, located at 817 Federal Street in Camden, New Jersey. Contact number 856-541-8217.
I'm Dr. Shawana Gray, and that was your Health Matters tip for today, because your health matters.
We are back with Kevin Walls, legendary high school All-American, Louisville Cardinal, national champion, and just a great person who's doing some wonderful things in the community. But we are taking this time talking about your basketball career, and we're going to go swing into things that you're doing now and what you're doing now and what you give back to the community. Now we're coming back the junior year, and that's my freshman year. I'm coming up, and I'm watching you guys, man, excel, and that was another great team your junior year. But the camaraderie seemed to be a little off that year because you were up and coming, and some great talent, and you know, you saw the camaraderie of the team not being there. What they could talk about why it's so cohesive to work together, and you could tie that in not only on the basketball court but in life in general, because that seemed like one of the things you talked about, the community not working together. You talking about, you know, things, politicians, religious leaders. That seemed to be a common problem among our people here in the city of Camden.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna take one step back. The summer of my sophomore year, I was attending the basketball camp, and I was attending the camp, and I got injured.
Correct.
That's my first knee injury. I tore my knee up that summer, so I wasn't 100% going into my junior year, and I was unsure if I was going to be able to play. So at the last minute, I was able to play, but I wasn't 100%. So that '83 team was a senior-dominated team.
Correct.
And quite naturally, when you got seniors that's trying to get to the next level, sometimes the ego part takes an effect. As far as being a team, you have to, like you mentioned earlier, you have to be a cohesive unit and accepting your roles. Well, once in a while during that year, we fell out of roles. Like someone may not been happy with the amount of shots that someone was taking, or you know, just the whole cohesiveness wasn't there, which is the reason why we didn't win the state championship that year. But it was an excellent team. It was probably one of the more talented teams that I played with over there. Yeah. It was a really good team, but it was a senior-led team. And me being a junior and getting a lot more notoriety than a lot of the seniors. But I was the first second player ever to make South Jersey's first team 3 years in a row.
Oh, correct.
I was the second guy. I was only the second person ever to make it as a sophomore first team.
Correct. Yeah.
So I don't know if that had the effect of, well, you know, he's getting too much recognition, this, that, and that. But I've always been a team player, as long as our mindset was the same, and that's to win, and that was first. You know, you can take all the points you want away from me, but as long as I'm winning championships, I'm happy.
Yes.
Because that's the reason why you win. I mean, the reason why you play the sport.
Correct. To win.
And it's like you said, it's very important. The cohesiveness is very important as a team to play together. And you know, when you play together, it's stronger. You know, numbers are stronger.
Correct.
You know, as you know, numbers are stronger. So.
Yeah, and I can only say, because that was my freshman year coming over, and you kind of like took me under your wing, you know, just watching you, because I was I wasn't getting involved with all the, you know, as we would call it, tension then, and all that you talked about. But I was sure glad that you took me under your wing and showed me things to work on my game, and that was some wonderful thing. And I was just trying to get to the next level, and you know, just struggle to get there. And I thank you for that opportunity. But now we come into, and I got to say this because I joke about this with my brother, who's a secretary, who works as the brother secretary at Muhammad's Temple, Brother Michael, then Michael Drake. He goes by Wasim Muhammad now. Okay. And we was coming over, we always talk about 86, 84, but you guys actually had the best, the top of, not want to say schedule, the best record.
Yes.
In Camden High history, 31-0.
Correct.
You know, you want to talk about that year, your senior year?
Well, we played actually one more game. So, I mean, you know, how I really want to take that. A lot of people overlook that team because it was so Kevin Walls dominated that they think that team overall wasn't a great team. But we didn't lose a game. Matter of fact, we were never contested in New Jersey.
Correct.
Like no one in the conference, no one, you know, in this area contested us. We went to Florida with a couple close games because they held the ball, you know, but we still ended up beating them by 15 to 20 points.
Correct.
But that's a team that they overlooked. It was a team that was well-oiled. It was also a senior-led team, but it was a role-playing team that everyone accepted.
Correct.
And that's what made that team great.
A little different. You had Ari Octavius Young on that team, Kenny Smith, Wasim Muhammad. You had Michael Gilchrist, the late Michael Gilchrist, who was a great person, a great guy, and whose son is excelling now in the NBA. Correct. Michael Gilchrist kid, Michael Kid Gilchrist that he goes by, and you know, some great bench talent. As we were on that team, you had Tony Still, who's the father of the great Devon Still of the Cincinnati Bengals, and that's in the story today. The wonderful story about him and his daughter as he's there fighting, you know, certain diseases, and he's going on being a great role model for men in general, you know, and especially fathers. And you had Lou Stanback on that team, and up and coming Lou Banks was coming on that team, and it was a great experience at Camden. And y'all won the national championship. Like you said, y'all played one more game greater than us, and I think y'all ended up number 2 in the country that year. You know,
I think we were in the top 5 somewhere.
Top 5 somewhere.
A couple of magazines had us rated number 1.
Correct.
But you know, we weren't the national champions.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, even though we had one of the best records in the country that year, and you know, we had like I was rated the top point guard in the country, or one of the top guards, and the top 2 guards in the country that year. I missed the Player of the Year by 1 point.
Correct. Yeah.
By the number of games that we won. Yeah. You know, so, but Yes.
Yeah. So now we go from there. Out of high school, had to make a decision. Was Louisville? I mean, everybody always assumed that knew you were going to Louisville,
Right.
but you visited some wonderful school. You even visited New Mexico.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I did visit Mexico.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
You know, a top 5 recruit. Could have went anywhere. I went to visit, like you said, I went to visit Mexico. I went out to UCLA. I visited Kansas at the time. I visited Iowa.
Yes, sir.
And New Mexico.
Yes,
so
sir.
they were my choices to visit. I just felt we had some unfinished business
Yes, sir.
with the other 2 fellas that were there already,
Yes, sir.
which may not have been the best reason to go there, but it was a reason for me to go there.
Yes.
And like I said, in some time in life when you're a young kid and you make decisions, it's not always going to be the right decision all the time.
Correct. That's right.
And even though we won the national championship at Louisville, and Louisville was great at the time, when I look back now, it wasn't the best place for Kevin Walls. It was the best place. That showed my unselfishness.
Correct.
Of wanting to be with the 2 guys that we had some unfinished business with. And
Yes,
that's
sir.
basically the reason why I chose Louisville.
Yes, sir. That was great time. It was
Yeah.
great talent. And as you talk about that wonderful team, and you went on to Louisville, I know it was inspiring to us because not only was Camden High School getting national attention at the time, so you guys were excelling on the basketball court. Now, you want to talk a little bit about the adjustment it took on the college arena, coming out of high school, coming in college, not only academic, but even on the court. Was it the adjustment pretty tough for you, or were you prepared, or you could think you could do something different, you could say something different to the young people out here that they may need to take with them as they can hear this?
Yes, well, there's a difference because now you're on your own. There's no more waking you up. There's no more fixing your meals. But for me, on the court was the biggest adjustment because now you got to remember I was injured for 2 years.
Correct.
And the injury never really healed. So now I'm fighting with bigger and stronger and better guys every night on a leg that's never healed. And a lot of people don't understand that. They wonder what happened. But the injury just never allowed me to get myself where I needed to be or where I wanted to be. And the adjustment from high school to college is just real more maturity. You and I know, it's more maturity and being motivated and understanding your role. The same thing. It comes down to the same thing.
Yes, sir. And I know there was some great talent, man, back then. And people don't understand that when you go away, you have to make adjustments because you may have been the man playing where you were at, but you go to Louisville playing major college basketball, and you playing against some of the guys that were all the men where they were at. And just as you said, the mature level, because some people couldn't mature academically or socially to make it in those settings, and you did so. And people forget that you did have that knee injury. That's why you wore that knee brace. You want to talk a little bit about playing with Milt and Billy on that level and those wonderful players that you played with then?
Well, now we're back. The 3 guys are back. We're more mature. We're older now, and Milt, people don't realize Milt Wagner went to 3 Final Fours before I got there.
Yes, right.
Billy Thompson went to 1 or 2, but I just felt like we had some unfinished business, and that with my maturity now and my toughness, that we could get to that next level. And then was having some problems early because I could never get healthy, and wasn't getting that much playing time. So quite naturally, it was frustrating. As a young guy, I would, sometime be wondering, well, is this worth it, or should I continue to play, or, sometime I just wanted to stop playing and just coach. That was just a natural reaction. But I said, let me give it a try, and year after year, the knee just never got better. But it got well enough for me to go on an 18-game win streak and win the national championship.
Yeah, so we're going to come back in our last segment as we winding down on this segment. We're going to come back and talk about things you're doing now, in the now, because I do believe that you still work for the Camden County, not Camden County, but the state. You work for the state of New Jersey as a correctional officer.
Correct.
And some wonderful things out of that. I know you, unfortunately, you meet some people who you know, but I know you always give a word of encouragement. I watch you volunteer for years at Camden High School to give back to the school, the alumni, as alumni of the school you went to. And you talked about the free basketball clinics, as we can see on social media, what you're doing in North Camden and the neighborhood that you grew up in. And we're going to talk about that when you come back. You don't mind? Stick around for a minute?
Not a mind.
I'm definitely, truly honored. I'm sitting here with Kevin Walls, the legendary Kevin Walls, who excelled in Camden on the basketball court. But, you know, when you come through that era and you excel on the basketball court, that just opened up the wings of humility and the wings of opportunity to do some wonderful things that many of us, that you see me, what I'm doing here today, you see other people in athletics, whether it's track, football, basketball, baseball, it gives you the opportunity to give back to our community. Well, in our last segment, when we come back, we're going to talk to Mr. Kevin Walls about some of those wonderful things that he's doing now and why he's Kevin Walls who he is.
Myth. Lightning never strikes the same spot twice. Fact. It strikes the Empire State Building about 25 times a year. Myth. Bats are blind. Fact. They see as well as you and I. Myth. Sending goods is the best aid to disaster victims. Fact. Cash is best. After shipping, a case of water costs about $196. That can buy 10 gallons of water. Cash sent is help received. You have a big heart. Use it for smart compassion.
And we are back. And as we winding down on this last segment of the Wasim Muhammad Show, I'm truly honored to have with me one of Camden's legendary basketball players who I had the opportunity to watch as a youngster, and Mr. Kevin Walls, who, and the only reason why I say royalty, because, you know, you got to be able to understand that some people excel as others don't excel, and just to say that you have a national championship ring that you have at the University of Louisville, and just to talk about being an All-American, there's only a few, you know, All-Americans around the country, and you were definitely one of them. And some people excel past the others, and we recognize that. But you're doing some wonderful things now and giving back, because I know, as I know, Camden gives you so much, and we know we have to give that back. You want to talk about some of the things you're doing now?
Well, like I stated earlier, I'm doing a lot of mentorship stuff, which is important in the community. Not only males, females. I teach females, and I'm starting. A lot of people don't do this at the age of 4 to 6 years old. If they're able to walk, I'm rolling the ball to them.
Yes,
you know, but at least they're in there. I'd rather have them in there on Saturday mornings with me than have them somewhere else where we, you know, it could be otherwise detrimental. But I do a lot of that, and the basketball part of it, but we also do a lot of the mentoring as far as academics. Now, my only requirement when you come to work out with me is this: you have to bring your report card period. And you have to have an updated report card. We have to see it. If you're having problems, we don't kick you out. We try to get you help. And with that part, to me, is more important than the basketball, but I mix it together. I use the basketball as a tool to recruit, you understand? So that's basically what I'm doing, you know, just free basketball class. I don't charge anything. I'm not a rich guy, but I get my blessings in other ways.
Yes, sir.
You know,
yeah,
so.
And that's great. Growing up in, for you, growing up in the North Camden section, and as we see, North Camden do have its challenges, and to have guys like you out there who are still willing to give back and do some wonderful things. And what do you think, if we could talk political now, because I want the people to know that, you know, just because you excelled in basketball, as we hear you speak now, that you're excelling in other things, because that's the best thing you can do is be involved, and be involved with young people in the community. And can't nobody put a damper or talent or a knee injury on that.
Correct.
Because that is given by the Son, God given, you know.
Well, a lot of people don't understand. When we as older adults, when we start thinking that we're a little ahead of us, we start moving out of the city. And a lot of people have. I just decided to stay in North Camden. I can move anywhere. I just decided to stay in North Camden so kids can actually see me. A lot of them don't know me, but their parents do. And I want them to want them to be able to, they come to my house 24/7, you know, if I'm home. I want them to be able to see me and say, listen, you know, I need help with this, that, and the other. And I'm just trying to serve as a leader in the community, you know, and I'm not looking for any awards, any acclimates. I don't ask anyone for anything. You know, I never have.
Yes,
I used to be a pretty much quiet guy. But, you know, closed mouth don't get fed. So I learned that, you know, you got to be able to speak with people and make them understand what it's all about. And that's what I try to do with the young men in the community. I still live in North Camden. You know, a lot of people, they said, the area's rough, this, that, and that, but we don't have any really significant problems in North Camden as we do anywhere else in the city.
That's right.
And as you can remember, a lot of people didn't want to go to North Camden. They were afraid to go to North Camden.
Yeah, it was a time.
You know,
That's right.
at the time. But you know, just making myself available in the community, man, and to help our youth. And maybe one day when I'm an older man and I can't get around, they could say I can remember that older guy. He tried to help me.
And they'd be able to help you then, you know.
Right.
But I think your son is doing a wonderful job in college. And he had a wonderful basketball career here at Camden High School, and I think he's at Cabrini now doing some wonderful.
Well, yes, he just finished up his senior year at Cabrini. Excuse me, him and Aaron Walton Moss both.
Correct.
Camden High alumni.
That's
Aaron
right.
was Division III Player of the Year 3 years in a row.
That's right.
He and my son both made Division III All-Americans this year.
Correct.
And their seniors graduating now. That's the important thing. I told him, he said, well, you know, I got a call from a guy over China, Dad, what should I do? I said, well, tell him you'll get back with him after you graduate.
Yes, sir. That's right. Think in the future.
So, you know what I mean? I said, don't let that use you. You know, I didn't have a father to explain that to me. Luckily, I had that mother, which you're going to hear me say a lot, that was strong. And that's what, you know, I'm just trying to give him some of the same attributes.
Yes, sir. And you see, as we just had a prior segment, a prior show with Mike Rozier and so many other people, even with Martin Sarton, everybody talked about their strong family values, and I think that's so important. How important you think family values is?
It's very important. It's the only thing that's important. You got to have that family value. You know, you got to value it, because we're all, you know, we're all important. It's not a person that's living that's not important. See, and when you get that into their head, that changes their whole mentality and wanting to be something.
Yeah.
You know, you can't leave people out. And like I said, I grew up in basically a Hispanic community. You know what I mean? So, you know, that didn't matter. I'm not a racist, as you can say. You know, you know, it's a lot of stuff that goes on where, you know, you can't say certain things because they take it personal, and you know, just making people understand life itself. You know, you don't have to be the greatest person in the world, but just be someone that's able to adjust and make a living for yourself.
Yes, sir. And I think that's very, very important that you said that you have to be that grounded and be able to say that and without fear and without favor. You know, this is the Wasim Muhammad show.
Right.
You know? We definitely can say that. Now, we're talking about the community of North Camden, and you know, you living there. Like I said, people generally respect you because of who and what you are. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And it is wonderful that you don't carry guns.
No.
You don't have to do that.
And I can't.
Because
I'm law enforcement. I don't carry a gun. I don't choose to carry a gun because I don't fight with weapons. I fight with my mind.
Correct.
And that's the same way I take my approach inside the jail.
Correct.
It's a lot of minority guys in the jail that younger and older, and you know, they get different vibes because all officers are different. You know, people react certain ways because of fear. I don't fear anything. And they questioned that when I was a rookie. Real quick story.
Take it.
Was a guy, I was at the riverfront at the time, my second day on the job. There was a guy beating the walls down in the infirmary. His hands with knuckles were bleeding and everything. So they called me the next morning and said, listen, you want to take this guy back to Northern State Prison? I said, sure, not a problem. Well, you know, he's violent, this, that. And I said, that's not a problem. I've been living around that all my life. That's neither here or there. So I got in the ambulance with that. I had the guy strapped down. He was in the ambulance. And about 2 minutes into the ride, I started talking to this gentleman and trying to figure out why was he beating the walls down. He said, well, you know, I didn't want to be at the riverfront. I just wanted to go back to Northern State Prison and this, that, and that, and that. So we got into a little conversation. I said, brother, why are you beating yourself up? I said, you know, it's going to be the same no matter where you go. It's how you make it. Make a long story short, we get to Northern State. They got 20 officers outside waiting for this guy. So we pull up into the intake area. They said, now, we want to let this guy? I said, listen. I said, let me go into the room with this guy myself. I uncuff him myself. I said, it's just me and him in there. Ain't much he can do.
Yes, sir.
We get into the room. I'm explaining to this guy, listen, I'm going to take this cuff off. I'm going to do this and that. And, you know, you just remain calm. Don't do this and that. Make a long story short, the guy said, thank you, Officer Walls. Now, it took one man, but they was trying to take 20 people to take this guy back.
Yes, sir.
So that's why I said it's a lot mental. It's not, you know, it's more mental.
It's what you call public safety on another level, but community policing,
Correct.
because you knew the
Right.
community.
No weapons.
And what you got? No weapons.
weapons.
Because you can do that. Because
Right.
if they can do it in Europe, in London, and the police don't wear weapons.
They don't carry guns.
They don't carry guns.
So
And
why can't we do that?
Why can't we do that?
Yeah.
And I think that
You know.
changes the paradigm here.
Yeah.
I know I was just recently speaking with Mayor Dana Red, and she was telling me how she was in Washington, D.C. advocating for Camden to try to get some money to do some wonderful things. And she was in the White House, and the former mayor of Louisville was there.
Okay.
And she said she felt so proud because the mayor, former mayor who was on Obama's cabinet at the time, was
Right.
so excited about the fact. He said, I had to come in and meet you because it was your 3 guys
Right.
from
Wow.
Camden that put our city on the map. So I had to come in and meet you. And she said she felt so proud at
Wow.
that time to be the mayor of Camden.
Yes.
And this is some of the things that you and those guys did for us here in Camden. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity. And is there anything that you would like to say to our community while we have you here as we wind down on this segment of the show?
You know, it's nothing really basically. Just, you know, as a whole, we just need to come together and talk more. You know, because talking, it solves a lot more than just physical. And that's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of people take the physical part and want to correct people. But sometimes all it takes is a little conversation to find out where someone's coming from and what they're thinking. And it solves a whole lot of physical problems.
Yes, sir. Did you still communicate with Milton and Billy
Definitely,
today?
definitely.
Yes, sir.
You know, they're my 2 older brothers. And
Yeah.
Billy's he's a minister down
Correct.
in
Yes, sir.
Miami,
That's right.
Florida, and Milt's
Doing well.
working for the university right now.
Okay, yes,
So,
sir.
you know, maybe one day after retirement, we can get back together and sit down and have some of these conversations.
Well, you adopted a little son out of that. Arguably, they could say one of the best basketball players in the state of New Jersey in Camden, DeJuan Wagner. Do you keep
Yeah.
up with him? I know the
Yeah,
relationship
well, I
you
get a
have with
chance-
him.
I get a
That's a
chance.
lot of points between y'all two.
Yeah.
You 2 guys stay together. I don't know how much fire that is. That's a whole lot of points
Yeah,
there,
that's
bro.
a lot of points. That is a lot of points there. Yeah, Wani's, you know, he's like a nephew to me. He's a good
Yes,
kid,
sir.
and you know, a lot of people don't understand him. But you know, when you go through the pressures that he had on him,
Yes,
like he had to carry an entire city. I had to help with those 2.
Yes,
he
sir.
had to carry entire by himself. So I think he did an excellent job, and he's still working on some things. So
Yes, sir.
good luck to him in the future.
Yes, indeed. And we got to push
Yeah.
our own and make sure that they're doing the right thing, as so many have done for us.
Yeah.
And we have to give it back. It reciprocates. That's the cycle of life. Everything goes in a circle. Everything must go around. What goes around comes around.
Correct.
And we find ourselves in those positions
Yeah.
of some of the wonderful people that helped us to get where we're at. As we, last few minutes, Clarence Turner.
Wow. I mean, we can go on and on about Clarence, but like I said, father.
Yes,
You
sir.
know, that's the biggest thing. Father and mentor, and it's everything. He had a whole lot to do with my development as a young man because he was the only male figure at that time. And you know, every day it's a struggle because I can't talk to him no more.
Yes, sir.
And you know, every now and then people come along where you think they're going to be here forever, but we don't think about that. He's one of those guys that I always thought that he'd be here forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He just meant that much to us in the city and
That's
the
right.
kids in our community. Everyone knows him, still love him, man. So.
It's a wonderful time, wonderful community. And, you know, you have some wonderful brothers who I had the opportunity to play with, Kurt and
Yeah.
Benji, that's doing some wonderful things.
Yes.
And, you know, wonderful family you
Yeah.
came from. They're very humble people. And
Well, all you guys are my brothers. You know,
Yes,
like I
sir.
said, you know, you were 2 years behind me, but you know, you guys were terrific people, man. And when you're a terrific person, it makes everything else easy.
yes,
You know what I mean? I always have respect for the younger guys. Just, you know, even though you were younger, it doesn't mean anything to me. We're all the same level. So,
yes, sir. Well, there it is. We have it. And I'm glad I gave him the opportunity to speak for himself. I think that was like pulling teeth because growing up in high school, as Kevin said, he didn't speak, he didn't talk too much. He was, you know, he always stayed to himself. And many of us assumed because it was the pressure of being at the top, people gunning for you. And but I'm glad he's opening up today because as you can see, he's given a wealth of information and given a wealth of service to our community, to the community there in North Camden. And we're definitely glad to have him. And tune in again next week for the Wasim Muhammad Show. I thank you and I greet you. Peace.